Sorry, there's a lot of feedback. Is that okay? You guys can hear me now, right? All right, sorry for the technical difficulties. These conference software is a little complicated. If we can all hear me, I will go ahead and get started, I guess. Okay, so the reason I'm going over all of this is because automation tools have given developers a lot more control over the infrastructure purchasing decisions. So what this means is that developers, instead of spending a lot of time planning what actual server components they want to put together, they'll usually just spin up a whole bunch of small virtual machines to take care of their workloads, and then whatever workload they're running is finished, they'll cancel them all off and repeat this cycle a bunch of times. And so developers don't care so much about the hardware specifics, so they'll go with the provider that has the best tools that help them make their job a lot easier. And since IBM is spending a lot of time investing in these DevOps tools to bring in more developers, to bring in more of the workloads, that's why I'm trying to teach you all about all of these tools. There's quite a lot of them, so it's trying to cover a lot of ground, but hopefully we'll get through this together. So from the Bluemix has the idea of what's called its garage method, which is this graphic right here. Essentially, it's just a cycle of stages that gets an idea. So you start with the think stage, which is your idea. You have an idea for an application, you have an idea for a code change, you have an idea for a new feature. And you go to the actual code part where you write the code, you make the change actually happen, you deliver that change, you continuously keep that change running, you manage the change, you learn from your code base, and then you go back to thinking of new ideas. And all of this kind of bundles into what's called the Agile Methodology, which is a huge part of what DevOps is all about. It's being able to deploy changes very quickly with minimal downtime, all in a very automated fashion. So you don't have to worry about actually logging into all the servers, updating packages, deploying changes. Computer systems do that all for you. So if you're a developer, this is great, since all you have to do is they'll do the change on your local system, but once you're done with that, you press a button and testing, deploying, and all of those stages along the line are taken care of automatically for you, and you really only have to intervene if anything goes wrong. And so with that, I'm going to get set up with a quick demo application so I can kind of show you how it all works, and if you're feeling up for it, this application is available for everyone to go out and try. So after this meeting is over, if you want to try it yourself, play around with it, it's there for you to go test out. So it's on the software GitHub page, and the project is called DevOps101. And so we will go check that out real quick. All right. So here we are on my DevOps project. There's this deploy to Bluemix button. And what this button is going to do is it's going to take care of all the manual steps deploying an application to Bluemix for the first time usually takes. So this involves creating some space for your application, setting up some of the DevOps stuff, and does it all kind of automatically for you. I'll explain a little bit of that in just a second once it loads up. And so what this is doing in the background is it's basically contacting Bluemix. Bluemix says, here's this whole code base that I need to deploy, and it brings me to this deployment screen, making sure everything is correct before I actually pull the trigger. So we can see right here, I'm going to have 3 main integrations that it's going to set up for me. The first is the Git repos and issue tracking. So it's going to take all the code that's on the software GitHub page, make a copy of that, and provide me my own personalized copy. So when I make changes now, it's to my copy on Bluemix instead of the software one. It's also going to create an instance of the Eclipse Orion Web IDE, which is a pretty nice feature that lets developers edit code online without having to have their own IDE or anything like that. And the delivery pipeline is what we're going to be talking about for the most part, and that is what Bluemix actually uses to deploy changes in an automated fashion. And that's where a lot of the magic of DevOps comes into play. So right here before I create my application, I can see I've got an app name I can change, what region I want, or organization I want it to be in, what space I want it to be in, and all that good stuff. And so we'll just hit deploy. Now Bluemix is going to do all of its magic and create my instance for me. And so now we're ready to actually get started with DevOps. All right, so we're going to start with the think feature. So on the think stage, this is where any new idea is going to start. You know, it's in your brain. You have to put that idea into words. And the great way to do that is what's called with issues. So this is the way that I track what my developers are doing. My issue is going to have a title and a body, which is basically everything that I want the issue to do. Milestones are a collection of these issues, which you can think of as features or version releases. Although milestones usually are shorter, maybe you might have like a week's worth of features in every milestone as you go along. Or a milestone might be some major feature that requires a whole lot of work to get pushed through. Git is a source code management utility that's used to track changes in the source code file. So anytime you make a change to a file in your source code, you'll have a git commit. This commit will have your username that says who did it, what lines you changed, and whatever message you have in there to say, I changed these files for this reason. And GitHub is a service that hosts the Git repositories along with the Git issue tracking system. And so there's the public GitHub, github.com, that a lot of people use, but there's also the IBM hosted GitHub, which is what I'm going to be using for this demonstration. On the back end, they're very similar. The difference is that the IBM hosted one is free of charge and can be defaulted to private, where if you want a private GitHub repository, you do have to pay a little extra for that. And so with that, I'm going to show you a little bit how to create an issue real quick. So what you're seeing now in this screen is what's called the DevOps toolchain. This is a collection of all the services that your application is using to do DevOps, essentially. So right here we have Git issues. I'm going to open this in a new window. And this will bring me to my IBM GitHub page. So right now I don't have any issues since this is a new project, so I'll just create one real quick. Right here we have a title, issue number 1. This issue needs to do things, which is, obviously if I was doing this for real, this description would probably have a lot more detail. I can assign it to people, so I'm the only person on this project, so I'll assign it to me. Milestones, right now I don't have any milestones. I could create a new one or assign it to a milestone in this page, but that's not important right now. Labels, you can put a label and a due date. And all the things you'd expect from an issue tracking system. So pretty quick and easy. We made a new issue. And now that we have our issue, we need to actually make a code change to satisfy that new issue. So with code, you have to worry about repositories. A repository is a term that means this is where all the source code files actually live on a hard drive somewhere. A commit is a list of all changes that you make to the source code, and a push is sending the changes that you've committed to your local Git repository to the remote or official GitHub repository. So this is a screenshot of the Orion Eclipse IDE, which is got a lot of features and a lot of really cool stuff going on in it. But to be quick, I'm simply going to edit the files in GitHub directly. So we'll go to our repository. We're going to go into the source code. And I'm going to edit the index page. So I'm going to just click edit here, which will let me make a commit just real quick and easy online. Add some text to the title. All right. And then we'll have our commit message. So when I put this number 1 here, that means this commit message is related to issue number 1. So whatever issue number you have, you put it right here. That way, all your teammates can keep track of what issue that commit was related to. And then we'll just commit our changes. And that's going to bring us to the run stage. So we made our changes. Now we need to get those changes out into the wild. Cloud Foundry is a service that's going to run your code in a containerized environment. This containerized environment is slightly different than a Docker container. I would consider it more of a specialized Docker container that gets run, that just runs web applications. The pipeline is a continuous delivery or a continuous integration tool that lets you define a series of commands that will deploy your application. For us, since we have a pretty simple application, our pipeline is going to be essentially pull down all the source code and deploy it into a Cloud Foundry application. So it's only going to have 2 steps, which I'll go over in just a bit. Continuous delivery is the idea that it's a process that publishes incremental changes as they get committed, which is opposed to a more traditional application deployment where weeks will go by, a manager will collect all the changes that happen in those couple weeks, make it into a new version, deploy that new version, and just kind of hope for the best. This way, since you're deploying each change individually, you can kind of have a better idea of which changes maybe break your system, or which changes are working well for you. And all of this is geared towards making changes less scary to be deployed. A toolchain, which we've mentioned, is just a collection of services that are used to manage your application. Artifacts, which you'll see a little bit, are the actual files that get passed from one stage in the pipeline to another stage. And jobs are the actual scripts that run in the pipeline to do work. All right. So since we deployed our change, we can go into the delivery pipeline. Alright, so you can see we have a stage running right now. This is because in this build stage is monitoring that Git repository I talked about, and anytime it detects a change in that repository, it kicks off a build stage, just automatically by itself. What it'll do is it'll pull down all the source code, create an artifact out of it, and it'll pass that artifact into the deploy stage. The deploy stage, as you can see, is running right now. What it's doing is creating that Cloud Foundry container for me and then deploying it to the internet. So as you can see, our deploy stage has passed. We should be able to go to this URL and it'll load up our Cloud Foundry application. So right now you can see my change has already been deployed, and I didn't have to do anything other than actually make the change, which makes my job as a developer so much easier. But if we need to do anything more complicated, we can go to configure stage, for example. And once this loads up, once it loads up, you should be able to see the specific jobs that it's running. And each stage can have multiple jobs that could happen, and they all happen in sequence. So that if any job in the stage fails, the whole stage will fail, you'll get an alert about it, and then you can go dig into the logs to see what failed, why your change didn't work. And that way it gets prevented from ever making it to a production environment by your stage. So right now I just have one job, it's the deploy job, and it runs just a simple script. So it makes sure I have this Elasticsearch service bound, and then it'll just do CF, which stands for Cloud Foundry, push my application, which are the exact steps I would do on my laptop if I was deploying it from my laptop. And here you can kind of see what the logs would look like. A lot of verbose information in there for you, so that if anything goes wrong, you can dive into it and figure it out. And so now that we've deployed our code, we need to manage it. And one of the great tools for managing your code is the monitoring integration for the toolchain. And this is one of the actual services that, from all I've talked about, this is the one that actually can generate a little bit of revenue. Because although there's a pretty decent free tier for monitoring, if you start adding a whole bunch of checks, that can start actually start bringing in billable revenue. So one of the checks I want to talk about is a Selenium check. Selenium is basically an automated way to test websites from a user's perspective. So the Selenium test, what it will actually do is it will simulate a user clicking around on your website in specific manners. And I will show you that, how that all works. So we'll go back to our pipelines. We'll go back to our tool chain, and while that's loading, this is what the actual Selenium test looks like. So it's just a bunch of HTML, and this tells the monitoring service that it wants to open the index page of our website. It'll click the link called All Services, then it'll click some box, and it'll make sure that this box has this path in it. So the test, every time the monitoring check runs, it'll do all of those things and report back to me how long it all took. Alright, so in our pipeline, what we want to do is add a tool. And right here, you can kind of see all the tools that are available. There's quite a lot, a whole bunch of third-party tools as well. And the option for you to build your own integration if whatever you want to use is not on here already. But availability monitoring is what we want to look at. So we will create the integration, which simply adds it to our service. And from there, we click on this, and it'll bring us to our monitoring dashboard. All right. So what we want to do right now, by default, the monitoring starts off with 3 tests in 3 locations, pretty much just checking the status of your web page. So pretty basic tests. But we want to add a new one. So add a new test. And there's 2 different types of tests you can add. A basic test, which just tests a single page on your website. And then the Selenium tests, which are called scripted behavior. So you click that. We have to give it a name. And then we have to upload our file, which I've saved right here in my library. Open. Click Next. And so before it adds it, we just have a couple settings. So this test will run every 15 minutes from 3 different locations, and it'll alert me if this test takes more than 5 seconds. Now right down here, it tells me how many tests I'm doing per month and my estimated usage. So this new test is going to give me 30% more usage, but it's still in this bar right here of my free tier. So we'll finish. And then we should, and that monitor check will be created, and at the next 15-minute interval, it'll be run, and we'll get some more information about it. I mentioned locations. There's a huge array of locations that you can actually test from, which coincidentally line up to all of the SoftLayer data centers. So as you can see, by default, we've got a test created in Dallas, we've got a test created in London, and a test created in Sydney and Melbourne. So we have a pretty good idea of where all of our users from around the world are experiencing our application. And if you want to add a test from Mexico, for example, you just click on Mexico and create it. And from that, we go into the learn stage of the DevOps cycle. This is where a lot of the really interesting and kind of high-tech stuff starts to come in. There's the idea of the Insights tool, which is powered by Watson to analyze your code for any risks to your deployment. And that becomes useful with Insight Gates, which are added to your pipeline. So anytime a change is committed, you can have a query in Insight Gates, which will analyze your code for any major risks, and if it finds that the change you've just committed has a high risk, it'll stop the pipeline, it'll send you an alert about it, and you can revisit that commit to see if it was to make it less risky. Developer Insights are a whole bunch of reports on this code. Delivery Insights are reports on how your deployment with Urban Code went. And Urban Code is a way that you can tie in your SoftLayer existing infrastructure with this Bluemix pipeline. So the pipeline is focused on deploying applications into the Bluemix environment, whether it's Cloud Foundry applications, Docker containers, or what have you. Urban Code, however, is taking all of that testing you've just done in the pipeline and allowing you to deploy it onto SoftLayer servers that the Urban Code Deploy server is managing. So that kind of brings it full circle for all of us. So that way our customers can have all their testing and development in Bluemix, and they're happy with that because it's cheap, it's fast. And then for all their production data, they can still integrate that with their existing SoftLayer servers with Urban Code. And this is just a quick graph of what some of that insights look like. So a whole bunch of really colorful graphs out there. for a whole bunch of metrics that for us we probably don't care about, but if we're developers working on a project, it can be pretty good information. So, for example, like this green and red graph up here in the top left, linkless commits, that's commits that didn't link to any issues, so those could be problematic. Big commits can be problematic because it changes a lot of files, and that could have introduced a lot of bugs in your files, and a whole bunch of other things that are really developer focused. And with that, we've successfully completed a full round of the DevOps cycle. And from here, we just go back to the think stage. You know, we create a new issue, we write some more code, we deploy it to our test environment, we manage it, we learn from it, and we repeat on that. And so just the last thought. So integrating with infrastructure. I already mentioned urban code deploy. There's also Kubernetes, which is a way to bring your Docker containers onto your actual software account so it can talk to any other software resources you might already have. Other configuration management systems like SaltStack, Puppet, Chef, or Ansible are also good ways to integrate with existing infrastructure. These at the moment don't have integrations with the pipeline directly, but you can build your own tool to do that for you. And then there's other build servers that implement, so the pipeline is essentially a build server, but there are other build servers that can integrate with your toolchain, like Jenkins, the Atlassian Bamboo service, and there's a couple others that you can integrate in here as third-party plugins that, if you don't want to use the Bluemix official stuff. And with that, that's essentially all the content I wanted to cover, and I would like to open it up for questions if anybody has any. So if anybody's got any questions, you can type them into the screen, or maybe unmute your line and just shout them out.
Hey Ryan, Landon here. Or Chris, sorry. I was talking to Ryan Tiffany. Hey, I wanted to know if, we were going to focus on one phase, talking to an infrastructure customer, which one would be the most, make the most sense to start with the infrastructure only customer?
For the infrastructure only customer, so probably I would suggest the monitoring service would be the greatest way to start, as it's something everybody kind of needs. It's pretty easy to get started with, even if you don't have any applications in Bluemix. It can monitor third-party websites or external websites if you need it to. So that'd probably be the easiest one. The second easiest, easy might not be the right word, but if you can get them to have set up a test environment inside Bluemix just on its own, that would also be a great start to kind of showing them the value of Bluemix. There's a lot of work up front in getting the test environment set up, but once you have it set up, every time you go through that DevOps cycle, it becomes a little easier and a lot more fluid, and you have to do less work each time you go around and get more comfortable with it. Anybody have any other questions? Thank you, Landon. All right, well, if not, I'll go ahead and give you guys some of your rest of your day back, but if you do have any questions, any opportunities, feel free to reach out to me or the rest of the sales engineer team. We'll be more than happy to help you figure out what your customers are doing and how best they can use Bluemix. And with that, thank you guys for showing up and listening to me talk for a little bit, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.